Today we have Daniela Marzavan, and she's a professor, but she's also the CEO or principal of a fantastic and creative agency that we're going to talk about today called the Change Dare. And she has a lot to say about education and the opportunities to bring something a little bit more than just a status quo model of learning. So I want to welcome you, Daniela, to Edventure.
Thank you so much for having me.
That's fantastic. I've
Adventure,
been I've
that's
been
a
looking forward to this.
fantastic name.
Thank
I
you.
love adventure. It sounds amazing because education is an adventure.
Absolutely. So I first we I first learned about you online. Actually, I somehow you popped up online, and I started checking your information. And then I saw that like your models and what you thought about learning and design and creativity, there was just this big, huge light bulb that went off. And then I had an opportunity to actually meet you live for real, like in person, by happenstance, by similar connections in Portugal. So this indeed is a pleasure to have an opportunity to bring this conversation fully together.
Thank you. It is. It's funny how serendipity works, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So, and I had no clue that you first met me online. So I guess the social media team is doing a great job.
Social media is the ultimate connector. So tell us a little bit about yourself. I just gave a brief description, but if you don't mind just providing a little bit more, fill in a little bit more of the blanks on who you are and what you do, because you have a very interesting path, a path that I think we all can learn from in our careers.
Sure. So when you connected the fact that I'm an educator to change there, I just thought about how we came to call ourselves Change Dara. And it was actually my former students um, from the University of Applied Sciences in Berlin that came together with me, a brilliant brand strategist, and my co-founders at the time of the age innovation agency we were going to fund to build together. And and my students are trying to explicitly explain what they were learning during the class. And I kept saying it's not really design thinking. It's something else. It's much more than that. It entails, the design thinking process and some of the tools and methods, but beyond that, it goes on another level. And in this 8-hour branding workshop that we had, we came up with the name Change Dara because basically how they described the experience of learning innovation, creativity by design was they said you train people to dare to change, to have that confidence to start, ignite, or even complete a process of change in any type of organization. So that's how the name actually came to life. It was my former, like the first 3 or 4 cohorts of a class that I was teaching at University of Applied Sciences in Berlin. I think the class was called Design Thinking and Human Values.
Wow. So,
Yeah,
so, so it really does sound
2009.
like that. I know a lot in design thinking. It's very human centered. So you're
Yeah,
taking, you're really focusing in on, in your case, the learner who
yeah.
is inside the classroom. So you were really putting that to practice, and then somehow you end up coming up with your own model for how to address problems. Can you talk just a little bit about that?
Yeah, 100%. So walking the talk and practicing what you teach is to me key because you only teach by example and you lead by example. And I see it in my kids and I see it in, how I learn. we basically copy, and there are things that inspire us, so we replicate them. So creating a experience of learning around design thinking, it has to apply the designerly ways of doing and thinking, obviously. The process I've met, and if you mean the 8 elements process, the social practice process,
Yes.
that is something I put into words. Actually, I should put it as a picture in the background and not this process.
No, that's perfect. That's perfect.
This one we color coded it to
I
say,
love
okay,
it.
the red part, beginning of the process, is the divergent thinking, the one when you create opportunities, then you create choices, then you find out what is the actual problem. And
Yeah.
the purple one is the business oriented one. We're like, okay, let's design amazing ideas and prototype them. So okay, let's go back to the model. So the 8 steps model that I developed during my PhD on design thinking as a social practice within process organizations came together from a analysis and research in 3 large corporations, a German, a Portuguese, and a Dutch one, from the publishing, automotive, and energy sector. Large, we speak as in, 600,000 employees, like huge corporations
Sure.
that infuse design thinking at different parts of the organizations. And in at least one of them, it went wrong. So I was really curious to find out why and how that went wrong. And what stood out for me was that the process was not valued, obviously, only the outcome was valued. So you
Yeah.
would have the leadership at the beginning of this innovation process come in and give a briefing or say hello, or say, yeah, we buy into this, whatever they were innovating on. It was a new car or a new service or a new experience, or maybe an internal challenge they had. And then they came back in at the end and wanted to see those pitches, as they call it, although it was nothing around investment in it, but they would kind of hijack the vocabulary from pitching an idea to investors as an entrepreneur, kind of playing with the thought that these employees would be entrepreneurs that would pitch the idea to an internal sponsor. And what I found is that the process was much more important and interesting and rich than the actual outcome, which you could barely convey in a 3-minute pitch.
Sure.
It was more like a show and a show off, and you had those people who like to shine and to be on the stage, which is fine. So what happened in that process was something that I could only describe by analyzing a lot of video footage, pictures, photos, and letters that people wrote to the process. That's a design research method. You write a love letter or a breakup letter to the process where you convey all the emotions. So things like, it's not you, it's me. I really want to break up with you because you made me feel awkward in this part of observation where we had to go out on the streets and talk to strange people. So these kind of elements of data that I collected helped me understand that what carries out the process of design thinking is much more than what we see. And what I saw in organizations was a big emphasis on the facilitator and the design thinker, that cool person,
Yeah.
maybe sometimes, with the sneakers and super creative, with sunglasses like
I know
this.
it well.
You know what I mean? And
Absolutely.
and with those colorful sticky notes
Yep.
and, super cheerful, doing some team building exercises. And that's fine. That personality or type of person carries out design thinking as a practice. But next to him or her, you have another 7 elements. One of them is the language that you employ, so the discourse. The other one is the artifacts, the objects. I found that it's profoundly important. How do you select your prototyping materials? So in a workshop with a university in Bogota in Colombia, where it was important to the group to create a curriculum around sustainability, I had the whole staff members with their tuxedos going out in the yard and collecting garbage.
So this was a
And
this was a university?
It was a university, a
Oh, that's
Catholic
awesome.
university, a very, a very uptight Catholic, like one of the
Yeah, yeah,
best
yeah.
business universities, super Catholic we had. And then I said, okay, well, let's find prototyping material. Let's use what we have because you guys don't have budget. So actually, to innovate, you don't need budget. You just need to understand what you have and value what you have. And as a metaphor, we went out and collected, and I have really nice pictures of people, reaching it into the bins and collecting, like, to-go coffee cups. And those to-go coffee cups were then prototyped to become a cloud where they would have shared information. So they would use metaphors.
That's
Again,
great.
using materials and textures that do something with you is important. Then another element that is absolutely undervalued is the space. I always say the space is my co-facilitator. So if you want me to teach creativity and innovation, and the space teaches or sends the exact opposite message, my job will be pretty hard. And either, you have to make up for this really hard work that I do in a way or other. Or if you want the experience to be better for everyone, let's have that space designed in a way that it helps me teach, or it helps people have that experience.
So
Mm-hmm.
it sounds like the model had an impact on what you bought inside of the classroom. And when I say classroom, I'm
Yeah,
referring to higher education and the
yeah.
university. Can you speak a little bit about how you bring design thinking elements into the classroom, that's higher ed, in a way that is a bit different, and perhaps I should say what's really needed in today's education that really makes your classroom work?
Well, first of all, I bring a suitcase to the classroom.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
So today someone gave me a lift to the university. I'm right now at the University of Economics in
Uh-huh.
Bucharest. And he said, well, most teachers just have like a small laptop bag and you have a suitcase. I'm like, yeah, because I don't know what I'll find and I need to hack the space. So I travel with a suitcase that allows me to hack spaces, because educational spaces tend to be horrible, hostile, and not really empowering the people who use them, or even inspiring them. That would be enough. Empowering, it's just the next level. And I start by, first of all, if the group, like in this case, economic students, have
Mhm.
no idea and no connection whatsoever to design and to the world of design, I start by asking them to point at things that they think are connected to design or are design. It's a very simple exercise. So you go like, okay, on the count of three, point at something that is design, and you go like 1, 2, 3, and people like, oh, this, that, this, and then they start thinking like, yeah, fashion design. Oh yeah, interior design. Oh, the lightning design. And then they go like, they show the application. Human interaction design. And you start this conversation where they kind of understand, wait, design is everywhere, and designers are involved in all kinds of activities. And eventually they start pointing at things that are immaterial, like sometimes even the experience there is like, yeah, this is also design. I designed this classroom experience for you. And the curriculum is also designed, allegedly should be. It's not always well
Right, right.
designed or intentionally designed, but it is sometimes a bad design. And then, we go to talking, which is very easy, talking about bad design, and everyone knows the tyranny of bad doors. So we talk about the Norman door, and they talk about the horrible experiences they've had coming to the classroom, mostly badly designed. Urban spaces badly designed, parking slots badly designed, machines that need some description for you to understand how to use them. And what I do then, I say, okay, well, we have, 6 hours together, or 2 days, or 5 days, or 6 months together. Let's design the classroom in a way that it serves you and not the other way around.
So what does that mean?
Well, mostly they start changing the way tables and chairs are arranged. Some other times they step out of the classroom and go into a larger auditorium or into the yard. Yesterday, the security guy came to ask if they were doing a demonstration, if that's a riot, because his boss had called him, had seen over the video cameras that the students, we had 40 students outside, and we were doing the classroom outside. So that was unknown to them, and they thought it's a security issue. That was funny. And yeah, so mostly they changed the tables, they changed chairs, they redesign the way they look at my slides, if I do have slides. What I do sometimes, if it's too many students for the classroom, which happens quite a lot, especially nowadays that, educational institutions try to save money everywhere. I use the phones as our interaction device. And quite frankly, most of the time, the best classroom is outside the traditional classroom.
That's awesome. How can the future of education change using design? And please share what you see as to be problematic right now, and where can we go with it?
If the people managing the programs would have at least a most basic understanding of user-centric design and would have that basic education of how you design something, keeping the end user in mind, or even better, co-creating it with your end user, that would be an excellent way to start. If those institutions even have assigned budgets to hire design teams that help them co-create with alumni, with students, better learning experiences, that's the next level, I think. And it's happening. So we have, in Europe at least, we have a consortium of academic and non-academic partners from across Europe that come together, mostly in the area of entrepreneurship and innovation education, funded by the European Union, where you have 9, 6, 10 universities all across Europe that develop and implement specific projects to enhance entrepreneurship in their institutions. And within these projects, as a byproduct, they learn how to design from a design perspective and keeping the user in mind. So sometimes you can even use another project, or if you're creating a new curriculum and if you're trying to create your innovation ecosystem, you can just educate yourself and your peers in applying this type of processes, I think, as a byproduct of another project. It helps too, yeah.
Well, that's very interesting because, one of the challenges now is how do you activate, the classroom and the learner experience a bit more, especially in the United States, where we have to deal with so many different regulations that we call the Ed Code and around accreditation and all these type of things. And I think a lot of times that actually scares the faculty off from really moving beyond this very static approach. Does regulations get in the way, or the Ed Code, or whatever is your kind of regulating body, does that get in the way of creating these type of experiences, or does it appear that everyone's on board at kind of changing the nature of learning?
I think they're an excellent excuse for most faculty I've met to not go that extra mile and design their curriculum in a way that they create excellent experiences for their students. So the faculties I've met so far, they're so busy with meeting the regulators' requirements of getting those accreditations. And yes, that's a bureaucratic process. And yes, it's highly regulated. And probably it has a good reason to be regulated and to be bureaucratic. But why don't you try to put the regulators' pleasers guy hat on when you do that job from Monday to Tuesday, and then put your designer's hat on Thursday and Friday and meet with your faculty staff member and create that amazing, thrilling education experience that you would have wanted to have when you were young. So that's what I invite our faculty to do, to stop taking that as an excellent excuse to not go that extra mile and not, and by the way, it's fun. It's
Absolutely.
super fun. It's so much more fun than doing those accreditation stuff. It's so much more fun. So if you would just create that routine of let's have a workshop every Thursday where we just improve and innovate the experience of our students 4 hours straight, and we play and have fun and innovate. Make it a routine, and it will just make, I think, the work life of faculty much better. It will improve the students' experience, and to me that's it's a very easy excuse. Yeah.
Good. So what skills, I mean, I know that you teach design thinking um, as a subject or as a topic. What skills are students picking up that transfer over into their career opportunities or into their career?
I do ask them what skills they transfer directly into their career and everyday life. And sometimes with my executive MBAs, I even ask them to write a reflection paper 8 weeks after our last
Uh-huh.
course together, because I found that it takes at least 6 weeks, if not longer, to have that knowledge become embodied knowledge that you
Mhm.
then actually can activate and use. And things they write are very different. So some of them, some of them have activated the skill of critical thinking, of asking why are we actually doing that? Is
Oh
that
yeah,
really
that's a good
necessary?
one.
Is that really the problem?
Yeah.
And it's a skill they've totally unlearned. So they kind of reactivate that critical thinking. Others write to me in their reflection papers that they've reactivated their capacity to understand their own biases.
Mm.
So
Mm.
they understand that they've been creating products and services and designing solutions starting from what they think they would need or the clients would need. Some others are super excited that they finally have found the courage to knock at the other department's door, walk in there and ask for some information they needed. So it seems like the skills that they reactivate or gain throughout my courses are just common sense sometimes, but they've been buried by so many processes and rules and whatever their
Yeah,
organization has,
absolutely.
has buried them under so many regulatory stuff that they basically forgot the very common ways of collaboration between people. So yeah, well, of course, and then more technical stuff like using a mural board, a Miro board, using design programs. So yeah, of course, they also gain technical knowledge that they can further apply in their organizations. But the most interesting skills is this reactivation of creative thinking, critical thinking, collaboration.
I love it. I love it. So, it's interesting because from my use of design thinking, I think the biggest thing that's brought back into the classroom with students is just the fact that that the challenge question, sets up the conversation, the activities, the work of testing and prototyping. And I think that's fantastic that you ask a question like how might we, and just inside of the question puts everyone at the table to start the process of problem solving. I mean, I love when the learners actually come up with an answer to that. I mean, come up with a question that helps guide them through the process there.
Okay.
So let's talk a little bit about creativity. How can creativity, from a learner perspective, translate into the work of industries, of economics, of like all the things that we're dealing with today as a problem solving mechanism.
Mm.
I had to make the last question very complex.
Well, executives, the ones that I work with, tend to be very creative people.
Mhm.
That's how they get to these leadership roles.
Sure.
They do think, though, that creativity is a weak signal and a soft skill.
Mhm.
So I think, again, it's really about deconstructing that image that if you're an executive leader, um, you only have to be good with politics, numbers, and financial planning. Being creative means being completely vulnerable as
Mhm.
well. And there was a big trend in the last years of, praising and celebrating vulnerability in leadership and executive boardrooms. I didn't see much of that stick because it's still a very hard, it's a very hard uh, area to be in. There's still a lot of competitiveness. You have a lot of enemies, and creativity is still seen as that weak point, as that soft skill, as
Mhm.
something that is maybe more attached to women or to kids, um, and I think what what executives learn in the classes that I teach, so what I observe is that they finally realize that the creativity that has brought them to that position is something they've put aside wrongly, thinking that it would make them seem or look weak. And they actually learn how to put creativity and chaos in a process that is incredibly efficient, time boxed, has immediate results, and a plentitude of byproducts, such as team building, assessing your team, creating crazy ideas that might be interesting 5 years from now, and so on and so forth. So they actually see the value of putting that creativity, chaos, and serendipity that we talked about at the beginning
Sure.
of our
Yes.
conversation, putting that in a very well structured and very rational process. And that's a game changer. So they understand that you can actually have structure in chaos. You can have precise measurement in creativity.
I love that because, one of the challenges that I've dealt with in corporate is, and I'll give you one example to leave us with, is I worked for a $2 billion company, and um, one of the executives came to me to solve a problem. And so I picked a team of people of young people, by the way, to help me solve this problem. But I decided to take a chance and move away from the Six Sigma process. I felt that that was too constraining and that it was too much built into our system and our enterprise. You just like click a button and just follow the process. So I introduced design thinking to the team.
Okay.
And this says a lot about how you communicate as well, because I started off being very educational about what design thinking was and how it can engage this process. Well, by the end of the meeting, I think it was the second session. By the second session, I had a mutiny on my hand. I actually had the people that were part of the team actually go behind my back and tell the vice president that the process was too messy, that they couldn't see how to actually um, how this was going to end up in creating or solving a problem. And so that told me a lot about exactly what you talked about, how constrained we are, and how the process of allowing yourself to do everything that you just mentioned is such a critical piece of opening people up to seeing outside of themselves and some of the processes that are so embedded into the enterprise in the name of change.
In the name of change.
What can you tell us about design thinking, higher ed, that our professors and our education leaders could take away as a source and a tool for engaging in change in higher education?
I think it's really walk the talk and practice what you preach. So if in higher ed you teach innovation, entrepreneurship, and your faculty is not innovative and not entrepreneurial, students nowadays will not buy it. If you teach user-centric design, creativity, innovation, and your classroom is not innovative, not centered around the user, and you don't apply yourself creative tools and methods to design your materials, students nowadays will not buy it. So I think that's it. Walk the talk and practice what you preach, and lead by example, teach by example. Thank you.
Daniela, I want to thank you very much for coming on Edventure. This is great.
Thank you.
We've been trying to bring more practitioners here, and this was fantastic. So I want to wish you the best back in Bucharest. Are you in Bucharest?
Yes, and I need to go also.
Okay.
Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Ahmed. Thank you. See
I'll
you
talk to you
soon.
soon.
Thank you. It was great talking to you. Bye-bye.